Hello and greetings, Fearless Schools podcast listeners. It's your humble host and auditory docent, Dr. Drew Tomlin, current middle school principal and educator. Over 30 years experience with you, and you know what? I've got hope in my old kit bag. Specifically, I hope today's show finds you doing well and enjoying whatever space you're in, right? Near or far, small or large, narrow or wide, no matter what your latitude or longitude, hemisphere or atmosphere, time zone, or by golly, ozone. Because really, no matter where you are, you're in the right place. That's right. Right here with us on the universally renowned, or that's at least what my mother told me lately. We'll go with that. Universally renowned Fearless Schools podcast brought to you by the unified chorus of educational voices known as Creative Leadership Solutions. So listen, once we've completed this joyous podcast trip together, do yourself a big old favor. Do some deep stretches, get limber, and then go to www.creativeleadership.net and check out the CLS site. You'll be glad that you did. And hey, speaking of joy, a big shout out to someone who always brings unfettered joy and a keen intellect to the program, the Director of Professional Learning for CLS, Dr. Ann McCarty. Well, you're probably wondering, Dr. Ann McCarty could not be here today, but she sends her regards and well wishes to us all. So somehow in her absence, we'll muster together some intellect somewhere. Well, we got the joy part. Somehow we'll get to some deeper waters from our shallow host here. So listen, I hope you've got enough room in your cranial satchel because we're putting together the superb worlds of, listen to this, educational leadership, novels, history, everyday superheroes, and much more with today's guest. And it's an honor and a privilege to have this gentleman on the podcast. Oh my goodness gracious, where do I begin? This educational superhero is an award-winning, best-selling, critically heralded novelist, nonfiction writer, TV show creator and host, and comic book author. His novels, oh my gosh, if you haven't checked them out, you got to. They dig into political and legal conspiracies, and he's also written for two small startup comic book houses, DC and Marvel Comics. You know, they're just getting started. In addition, he has an insatiable hunger for history, so right in our educational wheelhouse. And, you know, it includes discovering, uncovering, and recovering lost history. In fact, part of that famous work was saving the house in Cleveland, Ohio, not far from where I am, where Siegel and Schuster gave birth to Superman, right? And to bring together the dynamic worlds of history and superheroes, today's guest has used his steady compositional hand to write illuminating books like Heroes from My Son and Heroes from My Daughter, and continues to compose short biographies of prominent people and everyday superheroes, including educators, to inspire young readers on the bright road ahead. He has entertained presidents, he has worked with prominent governmental agencies, and that's all I can disclose about that. He is a champion of literacy, and he's even a champion caliber Jedi after winning a spirited lightsaber battle at a Florida Marlins baseball game. That's correct. Say no more. It's the one and only Mr. Brad Meltzer. How's everything going, Mr. Meltzer?
It is so good to be back here, and that is an intro that's making me blush all over the place.
You know what? Don't be bashful. Don't be shy. I mean, goodness gracious, a lot of renown and a lot of awards and accolades on the mantle there. But I know you don't rest on those laurels. You are a busy guy. Again, we're just so excited that you're here on the Fearless School podcast. You know, obviously, to get us warmed up, we're always curious about what kind of sustenance you need to sustain you in times of, you know, challenge and triumph with the work that you do. What gets you going in the food world?
Oh, that's a good question. So I'm a protein bar guy.
Yeah.
I don't actually usually need a big breakfast, but as middle ages hit,
Mhm.
I'm a huge protein bar in the morning. I almost eat very little lunch. I work from the morning until 2:30. I take a late lunch.
Nice.
And then, but I'm not a coffee drinker. I don't do that. That's the
Okay.
one thing. So I just need to I want to, but I just don't like the taste of it. So
Ah,
sometimes it'll be tea, but very rarely.
there you go.
You know, a couple of times. But protein in the morning is what keeps me going.
Yeah. No, you know what? That's exciting news. And it's interesting because in terms of no coffee, I'm famous for putting like 10 pounds of cream and sugar in my coffee. So I like to have coffee with my creamer. So I get it. I don't like the taste of it either. And protein, that's a thing. Like that's what all the kids are doing these days is that protein. So wow. Thank you so much for that starter and getting us going with that. It's interesting because you're a non-caffeinated guy, but you seem to have a energetic spirit. So I appreciate that. So we want to dig into where that came from. So who were you as a student? Your origin story as an educational superhero. What kind of student were you, and what and perhaps even who helped you learn?
Yeah. So, the funny part is, and I've never told this story, but I feel like I can tell it to you because principals bring it out, this is it. But,
Ah,
and educators too. I mean, everyone asks me about teachers, and I always talk about them, but to
yeah.
talk to actual people who are educators is a different thing. And I was a bad student when I was in,
Oh,
elementary school. I thought I was
okay.
smart naturally, but then eventually you hit like fifth grade and sixth grade and you can't BS anymore, right? Because it's like, charm doesn't work because there's real answers or there's wrong answers. And the truth was, I remember thinking like, oh wait, my grades are starting to slide. They weren't ever
Mm,
bad, but I was like, am I as smart as I thought I was? Because I don't think I am. And I realized I'm not. I'm not an intellectual.
okay.
And my family lost everything. And we were
Okay.
living in Brooklyn, New York,
Got
and
you.
we moved down to Miami, Florida, because my grandmother lived there. And my grandmother knew about this really good public school that we couldn't afford to go to. So I got a fake address to
Okay.
attend the wealthy public school that I had no business going to. But when I was in that school,
Okay.
they gave me an English teacher named Sheila Spicer in ninth
Nice.
grade. And
Okay.
Sheila Spicer, when I hit ninth grade, changed my life with 3 words. She said to me, "You can write." And I was
Mm,
like, "Well, everyone can write." And she's like, "No, no, you know what you're doing." So she tried to put me in the honors class. My family didn't even know what an honors class was. I didn't know what an honors class was.
right.
And I had some sort of conflict. So she said, "Here's what we're going to do. You're going to sit in the corner for the entire year,
Mm.
ignore everything I do on the blackboard, ignore every homework assignment I give.
Oh my gosh.
And instead, she was saying, you're going to do the honors work instead, and you'll thank me later."
Okay.
And a decade later, when my first book was published, I went to her classroom. I knocked on the door. She said, "Can I help you?" I said, "My name is Brad Meltzer. I wrote this book and it's for you."
Oh my
And
goodness.
and she starts crying. And I said to her, "Why are you crying?" And she said, "I was going to retire this year because I didn't think I was having an impact anymore."
Oh my goodness.
And I said, "Are you kidding me? You have 30 students. We have one teacher." And that will pretty much tell you what kind of student I was. I had a history teacher and a journalism teacher who took similar chances on me, who just, and what's so funny is that my wife and I were a couple of years back talking about this, and my
Hmm.
wife was like, I was in some of those classes. I went my wife actually in ninth grade,
Oh wow.
um, and she was like, I had some of those same teachers that you talk about, Miss Spicer and
Yeah.
Mr. Ferguson and Miss Sherman. And she's like, but I don't have any of the stories you have like that.
Hmm.
And I said to her, it took me a while. I was like, yeah, why don't you? And then I finally realized, Drew, that it's because those teachers knew that my wife didn't need the help, but they saw that I did.
Oh.
And to me, what I love about what I think are the best educators is they can find the ones who need it and
Mm.
separate them from the ones who are going to be just fine. My wife was living in that good neighborhood. She was, her parents were attentive to what was going on in school. She was top of the class. She was just fine. But
Yeah.
without those teachers pulling me and saying, one of them said, you should go to Michigan. One of them, let me write for the first time in the school newspaper.
Yeah.
They gave me these opportunities that built me into how I could then re-see myself.
Right.
And that was changed me as a student from that struggling one to one who had a self-confidence to say, maybe I can do more.
Wow. I mean, Miss Spicer did it with such a simple declarative sentence, so
Oh, yeah.
you can write. I mean, did that just
Well,
did
think of
the
it this way. Here's the moment, right? Think of the first person who ever told you were good at something. Think of the
Mhm.
first person who gave you your first job. Think of the first person who took their first chance on you.
Yeah.
Like, it may take you a sec or two, but you know who that is. And when you
Right.
know that person, I'll wager so much money that you think so much more of them and they have no idea what they did for you.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
because whatever, sometimes we go say thank you, but I encourage you, anyone listening,
Mm.
go thank that person.
Yeah.
Like, and if they passed away, by the way, go thank their kid.
Oh.
Because, like, I have people, my parents both passed away, and once a year at this point, they've been gone a while now, but I get someone who emails me or through my website or social media or something on Instagram, and they'll say, "Hey, Brad, I knew your parents and I just saw you on Instagram and I wanted to tell you the story. You probably don't know about them." And on that day, I get the best gift ever, which is I get a new moment with my dead parents.
Mm.
And so I encourage you, if there's a teacher out there or a principal out there or an educator or even just, someone who you met along the way, thank them. You
Yeah.
won't believe what comes from it.
Oh, yeah, we've talked about on this podcast before, like, the attitude of gratitude and how important that is and never letting those opportunities slip by. So, I often talk about my 7th grade language arts teacher, Mrs. Meekins from Lynn Haven Junior High School in Virginia Beach, shout out Bluefish, who, I would turn in my homework and I would doodle in the margins just because I was that kid, and she was my superhero because she doodled back to me. So I was
Ah, that's
yeah,
awesome.
literally marginalized. I was living in the margins of my homework, and she found me, and because I was a military kid, I was moved around, I never fit in. So it was always special to me, just like your Mrs. Spicer. I had a Mrs. Spicer in my life, Mrs. Meekins, who found me. And it's interesting because we'll connect dots about superheroes and your love of all things superheroes, but like the identity is part of it too, right? Like, did you identify yourself as a writer before she said that? Like, did you write on your own but you never saw yourself as a writer?
No, I didn't even know that. No, by the way, even after that, I never saw myself as a writer until I
Mm,
went to college because I didn't know a writer was an actual job.
right.
Like my family didn't know any writers. I remember I went to college and a buddy of mine who became my best friend at college said, you do the thing of what do you hear? What are you studying? And he
Yeah.
said, I'm going to be a cartoonist one day.
Ah.
And it was, Judd Winnick who does the High Low series. A lot of teachers will know. And
Mm-hmm.
and I remember him saying, wait, a cartoonist, that's a job. Like people, and it
Yeah.
was the first time, I know it sounds so obvious and naive, but it
No.
was the first time I realized, oh, people that make up stories get paid. That's a real job. Because
Yeah.
in my mind, I was the first in my immediate family to go to a 4-year college. So I didn't know anyone who was a writer. I knew people who had like what I call real jobs. Like my job's not real. I talk to imaginary people all day. But but then but Miss Spicer put in that idea that I was good at this writing thing.
Yeah.
And so when a job that I was going to didn't work out after I graduated, I was like, well, let me try writing a novel because I think I'm good at that.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm good at that without Miss Spicer. I don't think I'm good at that without Mr. Ferguson running something in the newspaper when I wrote my first story. And
Yeah.
I certainly don't get to Michigan without my history teacher, Mrs. Sherman, saying, maybe you should look a little higher and look at that school, Michigan. And
Yeah.
suddenly I was aiming for targets that I didn't even know existed.
Right. Right. Like in the narrative of your own story, you were almost like a minor character until someone stepped in and said, "Hey, I'm your protagonist. This is what I think you should do." Like that's so
It
powerful.
wasn't even that. They did one better. They were like, "You're the protagonist."
Ah.
They gave
Yeah.
me main character energy. I was like, oh, okay. It was a new story. Like,
Yeah.
it really was a choose your own adventure.
Hmm.
But it was like there were pages in the book that I didn't even know were there.
Wow. Wow. So talk about inspiring. And I want to get to the ordinary, because obviously you've talked about everyday heroes, teachers being everyday heroes. Where did the inspiration come from for your book series about ordinary people changing the world? What did you hope that students would get from those books and continue to get from those books?
It started with my kids, and I
Mm.
was just tired of my own kids looking at people who are famous for being famous
Mm.
and thinking that that's a hero,
Yeah.
or seeing someone on Instagram and thinking that's a hero. I'm like, that's fame, and being famous is very different than being a hero.
Yeah.
And then I told my daughter that I was like, oh, I have a good hero for you. She was 8 years old at the time, maybe she was 7 years old, and
Yeah.
I said, Lila, I said, let me show you Amelia Earhart. She's so amazing. She flew across the Atlantic Ocean. And my daughter said to me, big deal, Dad. Everyone flies across the Atlantic Ocean. Like
Mm.
she was not impressed at all,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And then I told her this true story that when Amelia Earhart was 7 years old, she built a homemade roller coaster in her backyard.
Wow.
And she took a wooden crate, she put roller skating wheels in the bottom, she shoved it to the roof of her tool shed. She put, two giant pieces of wood, and she came flying down the pieces of wood, flew through the air. The whole thing crashes and falls apart. She gets up and she's like, that's amazing, or whatever she yells. And I told my daughter that story. My daughter was like, say it again. Like
Oh,
she knew that was like the story.
yeah.
And what was crazy was that moment that Amelia Earhart, when her stomach bottomed out from under her,
Mhm.
she said she wanted that feeling back again. And that's the first time Amelia Earhart ever flew. She was 7 years old.
Wow.
And that's
Wow.
and so What I realized in telling that story with my daughter is my daughter didn't respond to her being famous. My daughter didn't care that she broke like speed records or, altitude records.
Yeah.
She responded to the stories when she was a kid.
Yeah.
And so when we launched the books, our mission was very clear. We want to show kids the power that's inside them. And so we did, I'm Abraham Lincoln and I am Rosa Parks and I'm Dr. King. And I was like, my son loves sports. And I
Yeah.
was like, forget overpaid millionaire athletes. Meet
Yeah.
this guy. I wrote, I am Jackie Robinson.
Yeah.
And then my son who loves Lego and who like loves is creative. I'm like, here's I am Jim Henson. Here's I am Walt
Mm.
Disney. Here's I am Mr. Rogers and Leonardo da Vinci. And my daughter who loves animals,
Yeah.
I was like, here's I am Jane Goodall.
Mm.
And we've now since done almost 40 books. We had Jane Goodall help with I am Jane Goodall. Billie Jean King spent 2 hours on the phone with me getting
Wow.
I am Billie Jean King right. We have Dolly Parton weigh in on her book. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just been incredible. We had John Lewis help correct and
Oh my
helped
gosh.
us advise us on our Dr. King book because he was there, and he's
Yeah.
like, I really like that Rosa Parks book, Brad. I'm like, yeah, well, you were there doing it. I just wrote about it. And so
Wow.
the series was for Chris Eliopoulos, who's the amazing Secret Weapon, the artist who draws these cartoon.
Mm.
It's obviously a kids book series for young kids, but what they really fall in love with is Chris's art, and he always draws them as kids.
Yeah.
And that's been the mission, is that kids will take away the power in themselves and see themselves in these heroes. Because anyone I've mentioned today, has moments where they're scared, they're terrified,
Sure.
and they don't think they can go on, but they do. And I want kids to see that in themselves the same way Miss Spicer saw it in me.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. To attach an educational acronym to your work. I mean, a lot of people talk about SEL, like the importance of social emotional learning, and
Yep.
how resilience and grit, and how important that is. What I find fascinating, what had particular salience with this, is that your story from Amelia Earhart's childhood was that it was in some ways ultimately a success ultimately, but at the moment it was a failure, right? In some ways it could be categorized as that, like she built something and it didn't necessarily work out, but she learned from that, felt that rush of, like you said, the her body going to a different place, and wanted to repeat that. So how important in your work as a writer, as a contributor to comics and everything else, how important is failure? Everyone talks about success. How important is failure?
Ah, I love that. It's funny. The whole reason why I write about heroes came from one story,
Mm.
real heroes, and then we'll talk about superheroes and all that. But
Yeah, yeah.
is this story my friend Simon Sinek gave me about the Wright brothers. He told me every time the Wright brothers went out to fly their plane, they would bring enough extra materials for multiple crashes,
Ah.
which means every time they went out, they knew they would fail.
Mm.
And they would crash and rebuild and crash and rebuild. And that's why they took off. And I love that story.
That is a great
I
story.
wanted my daughter to hear that story. I wanted my sons to hear that story. I wanted everyone to know if you dream big and you work hard and you have a good side order of stubbornness,
Yeah.
you can do anything in this world. And to me, until you just said it, I never realized I'm obsessed with failure. Like it's not that I love it. I drink it. I mean, it's funny. My first book I ever wrote got 24 rejection letters.
Mm.
There were only 20 publishers and I got 24 rejection letters, which means
Yeah.
some people are writing you twice to make sure you get the point. But I was like, if they don't like that book, I'm going to write another. And if they don't like that, I'm writing another. But
Yeah.
to me, the best part of that first book was the failure.
Mm.
It's what made me appreciative. It's what made me, want to do it. It's a vital part of how I do things. And I'll share this with you is
Yeah.
when I got that 23rd and 24th rejection letter, I thought they were going to be acceptance letters.
Mm.
And my agent said, "Oh, we got the final two people really like your book. So sit by the phone. I think we're going to get an offer today." I went and met with these two, editors. So I thought it was going to be it. And I was like, "You're going to get you out of all your debt from college, your debt from law school. We're going to get you out."
Okay.
I was like, "Great."
Yeah.
So I sat by the phone and I picked up the phone thinking she was going to tell me, how much money we made so I could get out of debt.
Right.
And I picked up the phone and she said, "Sorry, kiddo."
Ah.
And my heart sunk.
Oh.
But here's the thing, Drew,
Yeah.
is that every day I sit down to write, I recreate that moment.
Mm.
I picture the phone that I was holding in that day. It was like one of those clear see-through phones we could see the wires
Okay.
inside.
Okay.
Like, because that was high tech at the time. I picture the bed on one side, the Formica desk and the swivel lamp that every college kid has
Yeah.
in their crappy room.
Yeah.
I picture looking out over the balcony that I could see this fire station and concrete parking lot. And I count the doors on the fire station and I say those words to myself, sorry, kiddo.
Mm,
And I will tell you, because I never want to ever not be appreciative of this job I have.
right.
I never want to think I made it, because if I think I made it, I'm finished. I never want to ever be as hungry as I was when I was 24 years old. And for 28 years now, every single day I sit down to write, I say, sorry, kiddo, sorry, kiddo, sorry, kiddo.
Yeah.
And I don't, that failure it drives me.
Yeah. It's so much going through my mind with this because it's such a connection to what we do every single day in the schoolhouse. From a teacher's perspective, as well as a middle school principal's perspective, remembrance is the hidden R that a lot of people don't talk about. We talk about rigor, we talk about relationships, but remembrance and remembering what we were like at the age of a middle school student, as a young adolescent, or whatever grade level you're teaching. I try to put myself in the situation of, hey, listen, this student made a behavioral choice that was not that great. When I was 12 years old, when I was 13 years old, how would I have reacted to this? And try to
Yeah.
remember those moments, so that there's definitely a connection. And what I love too about your story about the Wright brothers and having those resources with them to, because they knew a crash was coming. Right. And I think about how important for a teacher's work, how important time is. That time is such a sparse resource, but we need to give our educators time to do that work. You had to sit in class and do that honors work, and Ms. Spicer gave you that time just to work on your craft. So gosh, that's so the importance of failure, the importance of time and visualization. Oh my goodness gracious. With that, since we're talking teaching and learning, as a best-selling author, okay, so it's true. I mean, you can't deny it. I don't want to just flatter you with that title, but you are. What do you think about the teaching of writing and the importance of reading? And you can get into fiction, nonfiction, and all that kind of stuff. Like, what would you like to say to teachers of writing and reading, and what should happen from your perspective?
Well, first of all, the only thing to say is thank you.
Ah, yeah.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for fighting to keep those alive. I read something today that said, like, people who go into like these pre-business things into college and they do that, they come out and they make a lot of money first.
Mm,
They do really well at first, but those people who like do those liberal arts, writing and reading and studying and history, like, they actually don't do as well in the beginning.
right.
But eventually the tide turns, because technology always goes out of style
Mm,
and always becomes obsolete pretty quickly.
yep.
But what never goes out of style? Critical thinking and
Oh, oh my
creativity.
gosh.
And so to me, writing and reading and the teaching of it, those are magicians.
Hmm.
Like, that is the power. They were sorcerers. And I think
Mm,
that I feel, I did this book. I did the commencement address at the University of Michigan last year.
yeah.
And my speech was, it was called Make Magic. It was all about that there are 4 magic tricks
Okay.
that there are only 4 magic tricks that actually exist. You
Okay.
put aside illusions and escapes, there's only 4 types of tricks. So 1, you make something appear. 2, you make something disappear. 3, you make 2 things switch places. And 4 is you got to take one thing and turn it into something else,
Okay.
which is the hardest trick of all, transformation.
Yeah.
I think the first magic trick is what you have to make appear. And
Hmm.
what I think you have to make appear is the best version of yourself. We all act one way with our friends and another way with our family,
Yep.
and our parents especially. But the people who love you for who you are, who accept you for all your stuff, like, those are the people who support the best version of you. And you got to surround yourself with more of that.
Yeah.
And I say that, it's a long-winded way around, is that I used to think like teaching about writing and teaching about reading were technical things,
Right.
that you have to, like, here's a topic sentence and here's a 5-paragraph essay. And I believe in that. Miss Spicer taught me that too.
Yeah.
But the more I've been doing this, the more I realize that what those teachers are teaching are empathy. They're
Mm,
teaching you to look through someone else's eyes. They're teaching you this mystical art of putting yourself in someone else's shoes,
mm,
and they are bringing out that best version of you. And so to me, I think those people who can teach writing and can teach reading,
yeah.
you are giving people a true magically transformative experience. Reading to me is what made my world bigger and taught me that there was stuff out there than our little block radius where I grew up in my little, working class, middle class neighborhood.
Yeah.
Books got me out of that. Writing got me out of that. Dreaming got me out of that. So I owe those teachers forever for giving me that.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, the empathy part of it. And we've talked about the power of nonfiction when it comes to Dr. Reeves' work with 90-90-90 schools that were, 90% poverty and 90% diversity, but students were also 90% proficient or above on state tests. And a lot of that is attributed to their work with nonfiction work and nonfiction reading and writing. But we can't forget, and I appreciate you reminding us that fiction and the teaching of fiction, writing and reading, and that empathy is something that will carry students throughout not only just their educational lives, but beyond. So thank you for that reminder. I'm curious, what do you like to read?
Well, I like to read comic books.
That is
I
true.
love reading comic books. So comic books are definitely top. I mean, I'm always reading nonfiction for research.
Right.
Just that's always like if you say like if you classified it, it's just because that's also work for me. I got to know how.
Yeah.
So I need to read X amount of books on whatever. If we're doing I Am Simone Biles as the new one, I'm reading books on Simone Biles. If I'm
Okay.
Abraham Lincoln,
Yep.
Teddy Roosevelt, I'm just consuming.
Yeah.
For pure fun, I would probably read those if, for fun anyway, but I read comic books, but I read every genre. Like
Cool.
it's funny, I tend not to read a lot of thrillers because I write them,
Mm.
and it's like a mechanic driving a rental car. I'm not enjoying the ride. I'm just taking it apart and figuring out how it works. So
Yeah.
like, I can enjoy a thriller for like 50 to 100 pages, and then I'm like, here's the killer, here's how the trick knows, like I can find it. I know how to,
Yeah.
but when I'm wrong, oh, I love being wrong.
Oh.
Like I say, like when I'm watching a movie, like I was watching this movie with my wife, and we were like, whatever, 40 minutes in, and I said to my wife, "Oh, you want to know how it ends?" And she goes, "Do not say a word. Don't say a word. No." And then the movie ends, and she turns to me, and she goes, "Were you right?" And I go, "My way was better."
Ah.
And so like I'm not even enjoying what I'm saying.
Right.
Like I'm just like rewriting what I'm watching as I'm watching it.
You didn't email the director and say, "Excuse me, I really no."
No. I thought to, but to answer your question, like I'll read young adult. Like I'm reading right now. Like I'm literally thinking what's on my side table right now, and it's like
Yeah.
I'm reading Carl, the what's it called, Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Okay.
I'm reading a nonfiction memoir,
Oh.
and Absolute Martian Manhunter. Like I got, whatever. Like I'm just all over the map, but that's how I like it.
That's awesome. I mean, it's like it's a good diet, right? It's got to be varied. It's all the things that we tell to our students every day. You got to vary your reading diet and your reading purpose. It grows different dendrites and all that kind of stuff in your mind. Oh my gosh. It's just really interesting. I love to talk to someone who's so proficient in their craft to see what their daily practice is, because it is almost like demystifying the craft, right? Because kids see books on shelves and they think, "Oh, I could never do that. It's a published book." I was working with a student today who is literally stuck on her cell phone watching videos, and I started to draw up on the board. I was like, "Oh, this scene looks like this. This scene looks like that." She's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "This is how this video gets made. It starts as a storyboard. It starts as
Oh yeah, storyboard. You show kids storyboard, and
yeah."
that's the thing is like kids learn in different ways. Chris Eliopoulos, our amazing artist.
Mhm.
You were talking about like doodling in the margins. Like he used to come home from school, and when he was feeling bad, he'd run upstairs, and his mom would say like, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" And he would draw his entire what happened that day.
No
He
way.
would draw a picture because he's a cartoonist.
Yeah.
And then he would fold it up like a paper airplane and then throw it from the top of the stairs to the bottom, and his mom would open it up and read it.
Hmm.
And that was how he communicated. So if you find this, this girl that you're talking about in class,
Yeah.
she may not care about the written word part.
Right.
But some people are like, "Oh, wait, this is a storyboard and you can communicate graphically." Like
Right.
you're the Rosetta Stone for that child.
Oh, yeah, because the old adage is it's not how smart you are, it's how you're smart.
Mm.
And it's our job to like help find that out for a student who might not see that in themselves. And I think that's a superpower. It's obviously a superpower that you actually have. I think of like finding these stories all throughout the world that can be so inspirational. So I'm going to go there since you're an educational superhero. What would you say are your own superpowers? What are your powers, or even if you want to classify them as super habits or powers that help you do your best work? And then we'll flip that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of them is I'm willing to just sit in the seat.
Mm.
Like that is part, like so much of it is just you got to put your butt in the chair and write. Like like it's
Yeah.
just clock the hour. Most people are like, "Oh, I'll see where the magic takes me." No, it's not magic. It's hard work. You sit and you write. I think the other thing is I do think well, I'll tell it to you this way. Let me tell you how I learned how to swim.
Oh,
I didn't know how to swim in the deep end of the pool. It was
okay.
summertime. I'm at camp. I see Joey Tusa's younger brother go on the diving board. He's like 3 to 4 years younger than me,
Yeah.
and he jumps off the diving board into the deep end. I've never been in the deep end my whole life, but I'm like, if that little kid can do that, I guess I need to do that. So I literally didn't even go to my parents. I went on the diving board. I wasn't crazy. I didn't jump straight out. I jumped diagonally toward the wall, but I just jumped into the deep end. And guess what? I
Mm,
learned how to swim.
there you
When I
go.
wanted to ride a two-wheel bicycle, I saw Ellen Nagel's dad was taking her training wheels off the bike. Again, God knows where my parents are in these stories, Drew. But like I don't know where they were. But I saw it and I went up to him and I said, "Can you take the training wheels off my bike?" And then I went to a hill
Oh,
and I got at the top of the hill and I didn't have anyone to push me, so the hill was what was going to do it. And I picked my feet up and I friggin' I'm sure I fell a lot, but I
oh,
held on for dear life and learned to ride a bike. And again, it's my way of saying I hope one of my superpowers is I'm not afraid to jump in.
there you go.
Like I'm not afraid to fail. And maybe I should have been from drowning or like cracking my head open, but
Yeah.
I'm willing to jump in. And if you want to learn how to write,
Hmm.
it's like riding a bicycle. I can tell you to hold this the handlebars and find your center of gravity and go 4 miles an hour.
Right.
But until you get on the bike and pedal, you will never learn to ride a bike. And until you write the book, you will never learn how to be a writer. So
Mm.
I'm just willing to do that. And
Ah,
that to me is my superpower, I think.
no, that's so
I hope.
no, yeah, well, clearly, I mean, you've had some success from that formula. I mean, that's a recipe that has served you well, and obviously, we're all the beneficiaries of that because audiences love your work, both adults as well as kids who are finding out about everyday heroes. You are much like Amelia Earhart, crashing but getting right back up and getting right back into it. Wow. So I'm going to flip the script that you had the superpowers. So, what is your kryptonite? What challenges you with that work?
Oh yeah, that's good. I think sometimes my kryptonite is that negative talk in my head that I'm not going to do it, right?
Yeah.
It's funny, my wife, I was complaining to her how bad, this was a whatever, 10, 15 years ago. I said
Right.
this book is so bad, I can't do it anymore. I'm not good at this. I can't do it. It's so hard. It's so this, so that.
Yeah.
And she said to me, she goes, "Do you understand that every time you write a book, you say that?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." She goes, next year, I'm going to mark down the date we are. And you're going to see that next year or 2 years from now, whenever you're around at this point in the book, on your next book, you're going to say the same thing. And when she said it to me, I started paying attention to it. And I was like, oh, I do this every time.
Uh,
And it's not helpful. It's just not. It's not a good part of the process. And I think as I get older, I'm willing to kind of acknowledge that, you know what, that is put that aside.
mm,
Like, and I remember in the beginning of my career, I was really struggling with my second novel, and this very, very famous novelist said to me, "Let me take you to lunch," which was so kind of him to do.
yeah.
I told him I was just struggling, and he took me to lunch and he said, "Brad, if it was easy, everyone would do it."
Yeah. That's true.
And I was like, oh, it's okay to admit it's hard. I didn't want to complain that I had this good job. I felt like you can't complain about being a writer. That's a crazy job to have.
Yeah.
I think my kryptonite is just myself. It's just myself and my
Yeah.
doubt and my fear. And I think it's not even doubt, it's just fear. It's my fear that I'm going to once again be that kid that no one's looking at and is completely ignored and is sitting at the back of the class and is having bad grades until Miss
Mm,
Spicer finds me. Like I think
right.
and I've never really answered that question truthfully, but that's my honest truth is I just was
Yeah.
I just don't want to be that scared kid anymore.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that so openly and honestly. First of all, I mean, we've talked a lot about on this podcast about psychological safety and the importance of that. And I think I've been thinking about this concept of fear in the work that we do. And the metaphor that comes to mind is like we get stuck in these roundabouts, like these traffic patterns, and we can't find the off ramp. We can't find our way out. We get stuck in these loops. And what's nice about the story that you shared about your communication with your wife is that you had someone to pull you out of that roundabout where you could have been stuck, and that's a really cool relationship to have somebody in your life that you could be that honest with. I could say my wife is the same type of honesty. Usually it's about how I'm dressed. She usually just pulls me aside and says, people can see you. So,
Sounds like we have the same wife. Yeah.
oh yeah. So that's a superpower of, cutting straight to the quick. But thank you for sharing the superpowers and the kryptonite. Any final words of wisdom for our educators and educational leaders listening to us, Mr. Meltzer?
No, Mr. Meltzer, my God, Brad.
Brad, sorry.
No, let me tell you something. The last thing that any educator or educational leader out there needs is any wisdom from me. The only thing they need from me is that I'll say the same thing I said at the start, and it's the only thing I came on here to say is thank you. Thank you. I went to my Miss, I'll finish with this, bring it back to Miss Spicer for a moment, but
Yeah.
so after I went back to say thank you to her, she actually eventually did retire, but she lasted 12 more years.
Wow.
After I went and said thank you. And I'm not taking credit for that. I'm just saying, wow, the woman who thought about retirement just, again, went another decade more than that.
Yeah.
And so they called me and said, she's finally retiring and you want to come surprise her. And I was like, oh, yeah, this woman changed my life. I will be at that retirement party. So I go and I remember it was at this at this restaurant, and it was on a Friday afternoon. It was like 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And I was so excited to go surprise her. And as I'm walking in the door, she doesn't know I'm going to be there. And I'm supposed to like hide out and duck in the back until they give her the award. And then I'm going to come out and yell surprise.
Right.
But I realized as I'm walking in, I'm like, oh no. I'm like, what if she's not as great as I remember? What if she doesn't, what if my memory from when I was a kid is like, memories are big fat lies that we tell ourselves, right? We just create them. But so often they're just a version. But I'm like, then everything I know about her, all my great memories, they're all at risk in this moment.
Right.
And so I go into the room and I'm hiding, and they give her the award. And really, when it's some glass plaque and crystal thing, and all she has to do at that moment, Drew, is say, I love half of you, I hate half of you, I have a nice life, right? Like that's the bit. That's all the speech has to be. She's never going to see most of them again,
right?
And she gets up in front of this room of teachers on a Friday who have, it's late, everyone's ready to go, and she says, "Do not give up on these kids. If any of you think it's harder now, if any of you think it's times have changed, if any of you think that kids are different today, do not give up on these kids. The only thing that's changed is you, and it's you. You don't give up on these kids. Need you, fight for them every day." And she gives a speech. It's like the speech in the end of Braveheart. It's like the end of Hoosiers. It's like the end of every sports movie. And I was like ready to sign up and be a teacher right there. And it's, again, I simply say that to say, like, those educators and educational leaders listening to this, I know you're fighting every day for those kids. Keep fighting for them, and thank you. And I say that not as a quote unquote writer, novelist, whatever, kids book writer. I say that as someone who is one of those kids whose lives you change but doesn't come back and tell you. Because every time I tell the story about Miss Spicer, or I put her on my Instagram or Facebook page, all these other students go, "She was my favorite teacher too, my favorite teacher too, changed my life too, changed my life too." And I'm like, and all these students never told her. So there are any teacher listening now, educator listening now, there are so many kids who are the lucky recipients of what you put in the universe, and on their behalf, thank you.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, what a way to conclude. And thank you, Brad. It feels weird to call you Brad, but thank you, Brad, for putting on your cape and flying in the friendly skies of our podcast today. Again, it's kind of a surreal moment for me to be speaking with you. It was a long time ago when we first met in Minneapolis way back in 2013. I got a little more salt on the muzzle now, but what you're providing today just lights me up, and I really appreciate that. Our listeners were knee deep in the rivers of podcast potential, and they were panning for nuggets of gold, and you brought them more than that. All right, we're talking big boulders of gilded insight and inspiration. It's true. Listen, Fearless Schools podcast listeners, you did it too. You're superheroes too. Just like Mr. Meltzer said, you took time out of your listening lives to check out another Fearless Schools podcast brought to you by the Creative Leadership Solutions team. Be proud of yourself, right? Pat yourself on the back. Go to www.creativeleadership.net, subscribe to it, share this podcast with anyone and everyone you know, pals, peers, provocateurs, rock-on-tours, pedagogical firebrands, family pets, whoever, whenever. So I'm Dr. Drew Tomlin, host of your Fearless Schools podcast, wishing you well and saying stay fearless on the bright road ahead. Thank you once again, Mr. Meltzer. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, brother. So good to be here.
Hey, thanks, man.